Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
All right, we're back here on the Brown Sports Bag. James Brown, John Butler. We're going to wrap up some recent baseball action for you guys. To start off in this first segment, we're going to talk about the 15th District Baseball and then the 4th Region Tournament draw, and then we're also going to talk about the 15th District Softball Tournament in the second segment and talk about when we might have a 4th Region Tournament draw over there. And then we're going to talk a little track in the third segment, and we got some other stuff coming up at the end of the show to yammer on about, I'm pretty sure. John, the 15th District Baseball Tournament was chalk in terms of like the two best teams, Glasgow and Barron County. They won their first round games. Got to the championship game on Monday, Memorial Day, and had an exciting finish there, John.
Yeah, I mean, it was a congratulations to both local teams. They did what they had to do, get to the regional tournament, and no real surprises in the first round. Glasgow took care of business against Monroe, and Barron did the same thing. Got a really good pitching performance in that first round against Allen by Blake Cook, and then it set up for the I guess you could say the dramatics of the finals.
Yeah, I mean, and both teams kind of did, I guess, what they had to do to get through that first round game. Like you mentioned, Blake Cook pitched for Barron. Glasgow started Ashton Serwinski, and I mean, he's pitched a little bit this year, but not a whole lot. And then they brought in Jackson Poland and finished off the last couple of innings with Tyler Lane, who does close a lot of time. You could tell both coaches, Blake Crabtree for Barron and Sam Royce for Glasgow, they were aiming to get their number one pitchers into that championship game, that being Jamison Bowie for Barron and Tyler Lane there for Glasgow. And for most of the game on Monday, Bowie looked like he was absolutely in control. The Scotties struggled to hit the ball against him, especially his off-speed pitch, but they finally found the groove at the end of the game, and it turned into just it's kind of situation. If you're a Barron County person, you look at it as probably as Coach Crabtree mentioned after the game, talking about the few little mistakes here and there and having to finish the game. But if you're looking at it from the Glasgow perspective, you're probably thinking to yourself, we made some great plays.
Yeah, it depends on your perspective. From the Barron perspective, anytime you lose a 7-1 lead.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, it was a 7-1 lead, and you end up losing 9-8, or is it 8-7? I don't have. I didn't write it down.
It was 8-7 was the final score.
8-7, that's right. And Glasgow scored basically, their all their runs in the last three innings. Anytime you lose a lead that way, it's clearly disappointing. And the game was exciting. There was. I did think Jamison pitched well. Glasgow did what they needed to do. They put the ball in play. I can't say that they necessarily hit it all that hard at times. There was a couple of balls that they really squared up. But what they did, they put pressure on Barron by just putting the ball into play in the last three innings and found some good spots. And Barron made some mistakes. But this was kind of a typical Glasgow performance, to be perfectly honest with you. They have come back. How many times this year have they come back? We've talked about this all year. They have come back several times this year from large deficits. So when you're playing Glasgow, you're going to have to put them away because they're not going to give up. They're not going to quit. And give them credit for making a great comeback.
Yeah, that's one of the things I talked to Tyler Lane and Jackson Poland after the game, and that was one of the things Tyler Lane mentioned, that they've been good at making the comebacks, and he kind of talked about because of that, they never think the game is over until it's over. And then I asked him, what can you guys do to clean that up? And he kind of laughed. He's like, you got to figure out something. Because, that does put a lot of pressure, I think, on the pitcher in that situation, that he has to be perfect and hoping that something works out for him at some point. You mentioned those last three innings, in the top of the fifth, Barron put up 3 runs, and that's when they went up 7-1, and it looked like or they went up 4-0 at that point. Yeah. What am I looking at here? I'm looking at my notes, and for whatever reason, I'm having a hard time figuring them out. Anyway, they looked like they had taken control of the game, and then in the bottom of that inning, Glasgow came back. Their 9-hole hitter, Hunter Scott, has really been on fire lately, and he really got that started. He got a single, and then Jackson Poland got on after being hit by a pitch, and it just kind of let the things go. They started hitting the ball. Tyler Lane got a hit, loaded the bases. Cole Stevens came up, got a hit. They were all singles, and as you mentioned, they weren't like, a couple of them were in the gap, hard hits in the gap, but a couple of them were just fell right in that blank spot in the outfield. They weren't really powerful hits or that kind of thing. They just worked out for them. And that really just allowed them to kind of get that momentum. And then they got the run in the 6th, that tie the game up, and then they got one more in the 7th. And Barron just, even though Barron had done a pretty good job of hitting Tyler Lane up to that point, he managed to either keep them from getting good hits, or they just made good defensive plays a couple of times to take away running scoring opportunities for the Trojans.
It's true, but it's when you score 7 runs, you expect to win. When you score 7.
Yeah.
And when you have a 7-1 lead, normally you expect to win, and it just it's from the Barron perspective. I know it's disappointing. I don't know how much it matters in terms of the regional draw. There's really not a lot of good. Whether you win our district or lose our district, you're going to face arguably a really tough first round game anyway. But it is something that that it's nice to go down in history as a district champion. They don't put district runner-ups signs up very often. So
right.
So it's a game that I know the Barron kids wanted to win badly. It's against your rival, and you want to win those. And same for Glasgow, they want to win those games too. And it's just like when you lose a big lead in basketball, and we saw that this year in the first round of the district when Barron came from almost a miraculous comeback to knock off Glasgow in the first round of the district. When you're up 7-1 in baseball too, and going into 5th, those are games that you hurts a little bit more when you lose those.
Yeah, I think about this particular junior class for both Glasgow and Barron County, because you mentioned that basketball game. They grew up playing with and against each other. I think a lot of them grew up playing, especially on baseball, like in the summer together, and then in basketball probably together and against each other. And so they've had a pretty fascinating year, competitively speaking, with the basketball games and this baseball game. And it's probably makes for some interesting conversations, because I think several of them are friends. Probably makes for some interesting conversations in the summertime between them.
Oh, sure it does. And the baseball teams are they're very similar. Obviously, they split this year. Glasgow won the first game, and then Barron won the second game, and then the third game, the district finals, it goes 8-7. So it tells you how close both teams were.
Yeah,
and are.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the regional tournament draw. One of the things that's kind of interesting in the way it shaped up is Franklin Simpson beat Logan County in the 13th district. I think Logan was probably the better team, but Franklin is kind of like Glasgow in the sense that if you look down their schedule this year, you're going to scratch your head, because they've won some games you probably think they shouldn't, and they lost some games you probably think they shouldn't. And they've had some pretty interesting scores. I mean, they split with Glasgow in a pair of games, and I think talking about comebacks, I think Glasgow came back in that game the first time they played and won 8-6, and I think they turned around and lost the second time 10-8. So they had a pretty interesting history, but Logan lost that, and that's who Glasgow draws in the first round. And Logan is always a powerful team. Of course, Barron drew going on the road at Russell County, and I think I would say that Bowling Green and Russell County are probably the two best teams if you just look at consistency through the season. But so that's a pretty tall task. It's really a tall task for both of them in that first round game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bowling Green's a top 10 team in the state, I believe, right?
Yeah.
They will be the favorite, but Russell County is always the team in baseball that's the sleeper. They just have a long tradition of good baseball at Russell County. I mean, their feeder program is really good, and they just don't play a lot in baseball in particular. They just don't play a lot of 4th region teams. I mean, they play 5th region teams and a lot of 12th region teams, so you just don't see a lot of them. but it's a team that's, since they joined, they've won this region in baseball since they've been in it, and they're always kind of knocking at the door. Team that scores a lot of runs and so forth. That's like I said, there's probably not a great draw for Barron, but Russell County is I think you can probably make the case the second best team in the region behind Bowling Green. So it'd be a tall task to knock off a really good Russell County team at Russell County.
Yeah.
I don't know if they play in the same spot they used to play. I think they do. The football stadium is kind of connected with the baseball stadium, the field, which makes it a really different environment.
I forgot about that particular aspect of it. I think you're right. It is kind of just backed up against the football field there.
Yeah, because in the boys, for whatever reason, I'm not for sure why, the first round games are at the district winner, and then everything moves to Western.
Yeah, I think here's the deal with how it worked out. Unlike basketball, which was because of COVID-related restrictions, what happened here was I think WKU has a summer baseball camp going on. So they had to play those games on Saturday at the district winner locations. They're all played at 1 o'clock. We will have the Barron County-Russell County game here on 104 The Score with Jay Turner on the call. And then we'll talk about how that softball situation is going to work out as well. So that's basically what happened. And so all of the games are being played the exact same time at the district winner locations. And I guess that's to make sure that whatever pitching and all that kind of stuff, everybody basically is playing from scratch, so to speak.
Yeah, I guess so. That's. Now, what would be interesting is I think the weather looks decent for Saturday, but our region is so spread out. What could be interesting is where one location gets rain and the other one doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, because you're talking from Franklin Simpson, I guess, which is it's the furthest west this year hosting a game to Russell County. I mean, that's a 2 hour, maybe 2.5 hour drive. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a pretty good piece from one to the other. So yeah, you could have maybe we'll have lake effect rain over there in Russell Springs or something like that.
I mean, it could, but normally, when it's at Western, nobody. I mean, you're playing the first round games at, on Memorial Day, and it's all, it's at not on the same time anyway. So I don't think that's that big of a deal, and there's not a lot of scouting being done anyway in baseball. So I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, it is curious to me they just decided to do it all at the same time, but I don't know. I mean, coaches and all are superstitious people, John. So they probably have some superstition related to if they were different times or whatever. I have no idea. All right.
Sure, I mean, you do want to get it. I mean, baseball is different from softball. It's because of the pitch count. You are limited on how many pitches that you can make for a week, and so I guess that's part of it. You want to get the games in on Saturday for sure, because then it starts getting more and more complicated if you have to move it to the next day and so forth, at least, especially if one group gets their game in and another group doesn't.
Yeah. That reminds me of the year I think Barron won the region. If I'm not mistaken, because of rain, Lucas Mohan was able to pitch the first game and the championship game because of the way that broke down, which was very beneficial for him. It can work out that way sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's in Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
We're back on the Brown Sports Bag. James Brown, John Butler. This time we're going to talk a little bit about the 15th District softball, and I guess we're going to talk a little bit about the regional tournament, even though we don't know how that's going to shape up yet. Let's start off with the 15th District softball. The first round games were played on Saturday. Unfortunately for us here locally, Barron and Glasgow played in that first round game, and Barron was they were just better this year than Glasgow with a young team. And Lily Brody was, after her first pitch, she was pretty much masterful against the Lady Scotties on Saturday. I mean, she started out by bouncing her first pitch off of Ellery Haynes' helmet and that was one of only 2 base runners Glasgow, I think, had in the game. And they ended up getting her out at first because of a ball that was hit back to Alyssa Curtis, and then she just stepped on the bag and got the out there, turned the double play. But after that, she struck out the last batter of the first inning, then struck out the next 7 in a row. And Brody had a good day, also hit a 2-run home run as Barron ended up winning 15-0. It was a good start there for the Trojanettes, John.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, all 3 games were very, very similar. I mean, Glasgow's just very, very young, and they play a lot of middle school kids and so forth. And Barron is one of the, they're ranked 22nd in the state. The last poll I saw was this week, and has, they just got a really good pitcher, and they got a strong, dynamic offense, and it's just. I think all 3 games against Glasgow have been run rule games, and it was not a surprise. And from Barron's perspective, they did exactly what they needed to do. They jumped on them quick, and you don't want to give a team that you're better than. You don't want to give them a lot of life, and they went over there and jumped on them quick, and that's exactly kind of the recipe that you want if you're a big favorite.
Yeah, it was kind of. I talked to Coach Crow after the game and Coach Murphy, but I talked to Coach Crow after the game, and he just discussed the fact that it was a developmental season for his squad with so many young players. I think 8 of his 9 regular defensive players are in the lineup are freshmen or younger, And so that's what he mentioned. He said, he didn't start out the season talking about it being a developmental year, but that's really what it was. And he felt good that outside of Barron and Allen, the second time they played someone, they were competitive or they won those games a couple of times. And he saw that growth. But, yeah, going back to Barron, I mean, they were expected to be good last year when we didn't have a season. They've been good for, the last 4 or 5 seasons. And they brought back. They had no seniors last year, so they were bringing that whole team back this year anyway.
Only have 3 this year.
Yeah, they only have 3 seniors this year, and so I mean, right? Their pitcher and their catcher are juniors. Their first baseman's a sophomore. Their shortstop Lara Simmons is one of the seniors, and then Katie Murphy, she's a freshman. I think Mary Shawka's a junior as well or sophomore. So third base.
Yeah, they'll be pretty good next year too. Barron will.
Yeah, and so it kind of shaped up the way we expected it to. Allen County beat Monroe 14-1. Now Allen County, we've already talked about this on the show. They've grown so much and got so much better from the beginning of the season when Barron played them in that first game and beat them pretty handily. That their improvement is impressive. But in that championship game, going back to what you said about getting on somebody early, that's what Barron did in that game too, and they were poised to, and it finished that one early in run rule, but they couldn't quite get it done, and that allowed Allen to score a few runs right there at the end of the game. They beat them 11-6 though in the end.
I think you can make the argument that it could be Barron's best win of the year, performance-wise, against a really good team. Allen's knocked off Warren East and has won 20-something games, and going into that game, I think there was – I think Barron was the favorite, but not an overwhelming favorite, to say the least. And I don't think it'd been a surprise to see Allen knock off Barron. And Barron played a great game, to jump on them early and to beat Allen 12-5. And Allen made a little bit of run at the end, but they never really seriously got close to Barron. And I really think that was, Barron's best performance, and that has to give them a lot of confidence going into the regional tournament by getting a win against a really good Glasgow team. I mean, Lara Simmons had a really good tournament. Alyssa Curtis hit the ball extremely well, drove in runs. Katie Murphy, I thought, was really good, and of course on the mound, Lily, Brody was excellent, and Anderson in the outfield got some big hits. But I thought that was Barron's overall best performance they've had in probably 3 weeks.
Yeah, other than when they were up 11-2, and they had a little bit of a lapse there that basically allowed Allen to get those runs. I mean, Allen put the ball in play, but Barron did have a little bit of a, mental letdown, I would say. Like the game was so close to over that it did give Allen just a little bit of a glimmer of hope. But then they closed the door on that. I mean, Lily Brody came back up there in the top of the seventh, and they got the outs real quick and won the championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, Allen was not going to lay down. And Allen's a really good hitting team. So to give up some runs against Allen, it doesn't surprise me. I liked how Barron started, and I liked how they finished, like you said.
Yeah.
To shut them down that seventh inning that's a good way of going into the region.
Yeah, and now the region's going to be kind of interesting because the 14th District Championship is supposed to be tonight, Wednesday, and it's, as we would expect, South Warren and Warren East in that game. But we've got
Probably
rain.
Won't even be played tonight.
Yeah, it may not be. So the draw is supposed to be Thursday at 6 over at Warren East. But yeah, it doesn't. They're gonna be hard pressed to figure out how to get that game in. I just don't see how they can because we got quite a bit of rain overnight and it's not stopped.
They put themselves in a little bit of in the region, in my opinion, a little bit in a pickle.
Yeah.
By waiting this long to play when they have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday to kind of get all this in, they've kind of put themselves in a little bit of a pickle with this weather because the region's going to start Saturday.
Yeah, the region will be Saturday at WKU for softball, and times will be 1, 3, 5, and 7. We may or may not broadcast the Barron County softball game. It just depends on when they play. And as we were just talking about, we have no idea when they'll play right now or who they'll play. We're waiting on the 14th District outcome. But I'm with you, though, what you said about the tone that Barron set for themselves going into the regional tournament. They've got to feel good no matter who they end up facing. I know they struggled against South Warren when they faced them this year, but they competed against Warren East pretty well. But if they play with that kind of intensity and focus, I think they are a threat no matter who they face in the regional tournament.
Well, it sure helps, their confidence, and there's no question about it. South Warren's the best team this year in the region so far. I mean, they're number one in the state, so
yeah.
They're obviously number one in the region. They've only lost one time all year. They're like 30-1 or something like that. So, but saying that, they're also could get beat in the district finals too, because there's not a huge difference between those teams down there as well. But I would expect South Warren to come out and win the district, and for Barron's sake, I think they probably want South Warren to win the region. You don't want, the district. I don't think you want to draw them per se.
Yeah.
Kind of stay away from them. It's, the old saying, got to beat everybody. No, you really don't have to beat everybody. Sometimes somebody else can beat the team that maybe you can't beat.
Right. Yeah.
There are pathways to regional finals that are easier than others, and so we'll see. You can't. The only thing you can control is how well you play, and Barron has put themselves in the best position possible. Then it comes down to the draw.
Yeah, and the rest of the we actually had a pretty interesting outcome in the 16th because Cumberland County won that and beat Clinton County in the final.
And what was surprising more than anything is that Russell County, I think you could probably make the argument. I thought at one time Russell County may have been the best team in that district, and they got knocked off in the first round by Cumberland.
Yeah, Cumberland was a team. When you go back and look at they've not really beaten. They hadn't really beaten anyone that's at the top end of the region through the year. But against some of the lesser, they really put up some runs.
I think they changed pitchers late in the year. They've gone to a seventh grader. And this seventh grader, I think her last name is Kraft, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, this seventh grade pitcher, once she started to pitch, I know she pitched both games of the district. She must be a pretty good pitcher because near the end of the year they have not given up very many runs at all.
Yeah, I think the most runs they gave up in a game with her in the circle was actually that 5 runs of Russell County, but they put up 8. And that's kind of the other thing. Even going back earlier in the year before they swapped up pitchers, they put up some runs in some games. It's just a lot of times the opponent also put up runs. You look, they lost to Caverna 6-5 earlier this year. and they got beat 17-12 by Wayne County. So yeah, they made some adjustments, and I don't know how dangerous that really makes them come the tournament, but it does make who's coming out of the 16th a little different.
They're not at the level of I don't think the level of the South Warrens and Warren East and teams like that. No.
Yeah, and then out of the 13th, we've got Franklin Simpson and Logan County there to pick from. And I'm sorry,
a little bit of a surprise in terms of Russellville at one time was making a kind of a name for themselves. They had a really good pitcher, but they kind of struggled down the stretch.
Well, I take that back. Actually, it's Logan County and Russellville we have to pick from.
Russellville they did make it. Okay.
Yeah, they beat Franklin Simpson 10-7.
I know they have a really good pitcher. Russellville does.
Yeah. So and we Barron saw them earlier in the season and beat them 2-1. And yeah, to Maya Collier. I mean, she's an outstanding all around athlete. She's a good basketball player too. So. And then Logan, Barron, when they faced them, they lost 4-3 over at Logan County. Logan's always pretty solid there in the softball.
Yeah. I mean, there's like I said, there's not a lot of great draws you can make, but there's some better than others.
Yeah,
I don't want to draw the 14th.
Here's an interesting score for you coming from talking about the 13th. Logan County beat Russellville in the championship game 18-14. It's kind of like a good defensive football game.
Well, it just makes me wonder, did Collier of Russellville even pitch that game? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't seem normal to me.
Yeah, these scores in that 13th district tournament. I mean, Logan beat Todd County 16-8 in the first round. Russellville beat Franklin Simpson 10-7, and then Logan County punched one in late from a yard out to win 18-14 in the championship game.
Yeah, I mean it's slow pitch softball scores too. Way back when you had slow pitch, that is weird. That's normally not the recipe to win regions though.
Yeah, no, I would think not. So again, we kind of go back to what you were talking about. Barron probably they're in great shape against pretty much anyone they draw outside of the loser between South Warren and Warren East. I mean, those are. Right now, I would say it's clear that it's those two and Barron, and if the bracket shapes up right, it'll be an interesting see how far Barron can take it, especially if they can play the way they did for 6 innings against Allen County the other day.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they are that was the best that I think they've played in a long time, and that's exactly what you kind of want going into the region. I'm sure they'd like to play the region right now.
Yeah, probably so. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, the busy Memorial Day weekend extended into Tuesday for people who are fans of high school sports because we had the Class 2A Region 2 track meet over at Warren East. On Saturday, we had the Barron County ran in the Class 3A Region 2 meet at Warren East. So we've had several state qualifiers and event winners to come out of the two schools. Let's drop back to Saturday real quick and talk about some of the top performances there for the Barron County squads. Gracie Reed had an outstanding day. Actually, she and Chesney McPherson both did. Gracie won the 1600, and then Chesney won, and I think Chesney was second in that. And then Chesney won the 2 mile, I think it was.
No, I think it was opposite. I think Gracie Reed won the 2 mile.
Yeah.
And Chelsea won the mile.
Yeah, you're right. And then Chesney finished second in the 2 mile.
Correct.
And then Jamarcus Miley won the 100-meter dash. So Chesney,
I can't emphasize this enough. Probably that's one of the more impressive things that I've noticed for Barron in high school sports in a while. To be perfectly honest with you, to have the 3 regional champions come out of that region. Now, I don't know, if you're not familiar with track, Barron runs in the same region as Bowling Green and North Hardin.
Yeah.
And North Hardin is about as elite of a track program as you're ever going to find, a dominant track program. And when we can put 3 individual winners in that region, that's impressive. And if you can win the North Hardin region with South Warren and Bowling Green and some of those schools in it, then you are instantly a state title contender. And, Jamarcus Miley winning the 100-yard dash with some of the speed in this region is extremely impressive.
Yeah.
And, that gets your attention because they got some fast guys in those sprints, I can tell you that.
Yeah, we were previewing this last week, and we were talking about the fact that Jamarcus had the top time headed into the region, but that time was actually on a hand time at the Glasgow Scotty Classic over there, and it was 10.84, and we weren't sure, even with North Hardin coming in, and they're going to have guys that have run some top times as well. We wasn't sure if that was going to hold up, but it did. He ran 11.07 to win that 100-meter dash.
Extremely impressive. I mean, of course, I watched Jamarcus play 4 years in football, and I knew what type of athlete he was, and he had tremendous speed in the receiver position, and also he ran back a lot of kicks and so forth. And of course, he's signed to go to Campbellsville, but I mean, to transform that onto, winning the region in the 100-yard dash, that's the fastest of the fastest right there,
Right.
That's impressive. And I was looking up, I was trying to compare scores, and I was looking at, I looked at Gracie Reed's time too, and of course, she's a 7th grader, and she won the 2-mile. And I looked at the other 3A, there's like 5 regions, I think, inside the 3A. And I was looking at some of the other ones, and I've only found one time that was faster than hers in the state right now. And I think it's a girl from Lafayette, actually.
Yeah, I think, is her name Sierra O'Shea?
Her time was fabulous, and give her credit. And Chelsea McPherson, right?
Yep.
That's right, isn't it?
Chesney
yeah,
McPherson.
her
Yep.
time was good too in a mile, and that got my attention when we had 3 winners in that strong region. Is extremely impressive.
Yeah, and then like I said, we previewed what Barron could do, what their top runners could do in their region, and then Glasgow's group, they were right there too, and they run in a 2A region that features John Hardin, Taylor County, Warren East, which is always very good, especially on the girls' side. And so they had several folks who did well, especially Caroline Murphy and Jamari Mack. Caroline Murphy was 2nd in the high jump. She won the 100 hurdles, and then she also qualified for state in the 4x100 dash, which they won that event. And then Jamari Mack, he qualified in 4 events to go to state. He was 2nd in both the 100 and 200 dash, and then he was on the 4x100 and 4x200 relay teams. The 200 won, and the 4x1 was 2nd. The only person that really kind of interrupted Jamari Mack having 3 number 1s was a kid named Kelvion Wilson out of John Hardin, who won the 100 and 200 and was on the anchor leg of that 4x1 that he pulled away and won that at the end of that. So, I mean, we had some good performances.
Qualifying in 4 events is super impressive as well.
Yeah. And Jamari, he going back to football, I mean, we've seen him play football on the defensive, offensive side of the ball and make some big plays over the last few years. But, I mean, he sometimes you got talking about that transforming, that's football speed, the track speed. Some people are fast on the track, but they're not particularly fast on the football field. And then some people are fast on the football field, but they're not particularly fast on the track. It's kind of you would think they would be the same, but it's really not.
No, it's not, and that's extremely impressive right there. And Caroline Murphy too. I mean, that's congratulations to her.
Yeah, she had a great day. The funny thing was she cleared 5.2 on the high jump. A girl from Warren Central was ahead of her there, and then she had to go check in for the 100-meter hurdles while she was doing the high jump. Came back over, finished up the high jump, then went straight over and ran the 100-meter hurdles and won that event.
That's not easy to do.
No, I mean, I was thinking to myself, I was like, surely she's going to wear out at some point in time. And then, not too long after that, she was on the 4x100 relay team with Kiara Green, Micaiah Fogel, and Mariona Bradley. And ran well in that as well. And then she also ran in the 300 hurdles. She finished fourth there. But I think you could tell by then, like, all that was packed in pretty close together. She looked like she may have run out of a little bit of steam by the time she got to that 300 hurdles. She's just a sophomore.
Yeah, but that's still a heck of an accomplishment. I mean, track is another sport that doesn't get a lot of, there's not a lot of fame, obviously, in track and field, like maybe basketball or football. But I tell you what, that's the performances those kids put on that's really good.
Yeah,
wish them the best of luck in the state. And if you're, I wouldn't be shocked to see somebody from our area, be clearly a medal winner. It'd be nice if somebody could be a state champion.
Yeah, we've got three. I'd say Gracie Reed and Jamarcus Miley in his event, and then you've got that 4x100 team for Glasgow's girls and the 4x100 boys team, which also featured, along with Jamari Mack, Carter McKeever, Rico Crowder, and Jay Long. Both of those are running times that are close to the top of the list. And, the thing about that state track meet, you get there, nerves probably kicking a little bit, but everybody's kind of the same speed. The difference is those exchange zones, how well you get your exchanges and whether or not they're smooth. I mean, that can be the difference between first and fourth, really, a lot of times.
Yeah, sometimes those, it's a tenth of a second difference that separates people.
Yeah. Mariona Bradley also won the 200-meter dash, so she's pretty fast. But
that's a tough event right there.
Yeah, so that's you mentioned the state. The state meets are coming up next weekend. The Class 2A meet is on Friday, June the 11th, and then the 3A meet is on Saturday, June 12th. They're all up at Lexington at the University of Kentucky track there. And, to be honest with you, some of my favorite things to go to through the years have been like the state track meet and that kind of thing, because you see these high school kids and whatnot. I mean, you get to see some just top-notch athletes in these events up there. And you're talking about tenths of a second. I mean, that's usually those races usually at that state meet level are that close. And that's exciting stuff.
And remember, this is an event that was canceled last year.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, we talk about, losing, baseball and softball, but also the track runners did not get to participate either last year.
Yeah, and there were probably a lot of kids who were seniors last year who were looking forward to their moment there to get to state and maybe, win an event there, and they did not get that opportunity. But
yeah, and it seems like a it seems like a distant memory in one sense, and in another sense, it seems like it just happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we have progressed so far this year from where we were even in January.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. One last thing about the track meets. I think Glasgow's girls finished fifth in the team scores. Warren East won that. Glasgow's boys, I think, were seventh, and John Harden nosed out Thomas Nelson to win that. Thomas Nelson, talking about difference between track and football. I mean, Thomas Nelson's went 1-8 in football. They're a 3A school in Elizabethtown's district. I think got beat 63-7 in the first round of the football playoffs. But they produce kids who get out there on the track and perform well. They had a good day out there, and I was talking to somebody while I was out there, and we were both like, Thomas Nelson, doing well at track, because I just think of Thomas Nelson as this little bitty old school in Nelson County that most people don't even realize exists. So that was an interesting kind of deal.
Yeah, they won't be little for too long. I mean, they weren't designed to be a small school. That's Nelson County is a big school, so they've got 4 schools now in Nelson County: Nelson, Thomas Nelson, Barchtown, and Bethlehem. Yeah,
it is. Not too long ago, I think Thomas Nelson was kind of a 1A school. I don't know how long it's actually been open, but it took a little while before it got started growing. But yeah, it has been growing pretty rapidly lately. So yeah, it won't be a small school for very long. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, none of our teams here in the state of Kentucky made the softball World Series. Kentucky put up a fight against Alabama. I think they were the number 3 team. But, you know, we've learned that those teams down there in the deeper South and out on the West Coast are just powerhouses when it comes to college softball.
Well, we also learned it's hard to beat Montana Fouts.
Yeah. You know, people talk about
Kentucky,
missing.
Kentucky has, as soon as you saw they was going to be sent to Alabama, they knew that was going to be a tough matchup for them. But they performed well. I mean, they didn't embarrass themselves in any way. But Alabama's one of the, teams to beat, in the College World Series.
Yeah, people not jokingly, sometimes they're serious about, Kentucky or in-state colleges missing on in-state prospects in different sports. They usually talk about it when it comes to basketball or football. But, you want to talk about missing on an opportunity to bring in a game changer for your program. Imagine if Kentucky or Louisville or somebody had been able to convince Montana Fouts to stick around in the state.
Well, she committed to Alabama her freshman year, and she's not one of these that changes her mind evidently 100 times.
Yeah,
she committed her freshman year to Alabama. That's where she wanted to go, and so that's where she stuck with her commitment. I mean, she's a great. Obviously, you put her on Kentucky's team, and you may have a reversal of fortune. But it's not like I'm sure everybody in the country was recruiting her.
Oh yeah, she had to have been one of the hottest softball prospects in the country, especially by her senior year. I mean,
an ERA of under 1.
Yeah,
no, she was somebody. Everybody was after her for. I mean, she started pitching, I think, at East Carter, wasn't West Carter, in the 7th grade. So, yeah, she's been a dominant pitcher. She's been on everybody's radar. I mean, Alabama offered her, when she was a freshman. So,
right.
It tells you, they knew what they were doing. But
right.
Kentucky did, too. I mean, it just came down to that's where she wanted to go. I mean, we've lost some football players. The state of Kentucky's lost some good football players to Alabama as well.
Yeah, I mean, Tanner Bowles is down there right now, Glasgow graduate.
Absolutely.
So how do you think this World Series is going to shape up?
Well, Oklahoma's a team to beat. They have they're the best offensive team maybe in the history of softball. So they will be a tough team to beat because they just hit it so well. UCLA is the defending national champions, and they got most of their players back, and they're the 2 seed. And I like Alabama. Obviously, I don't know if Alabama has the firepower to beat Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's going to be tough to beat them.
Going back to the Fouts thing, I mean, how much used to, if you had a dominant pitcher, you basically you were going to win, or you had a good shot to win every game. But the offenses have turned around so much in softball that I don't know how. I mean, a dominant pitcher is still going to be hard to beat, but it's not as dominant as it used to be.
No, it's not as dominant as it used to be, and she will. I mean, she's going to be hard to beat, but there's it's a double elimination format, and there's a lot of games to be played, and she's not going to be able to pitch every game. And plus, Oklahoma is probably one of the few teams that hit it so well that they could give even the Montana Fouts trouble.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the report came down this morning that Danny Ainge is out as president and GM of the Celtics. I guess whatever that process was he was trying to put together didn't really pan out for him.
Well, I mean, it's they have had a lot of draft picks and so forth, and I think you could say they've underachieved the last couple of years. It's hard to the results have not been there. So if you go by the results that have not been there, but for his tenure, he's done a good job. Obviously, he won a championship, and made a lot of trades and got the championships with Paul Pierce and that group. And And he's done a very good job. It's in the NBA, if you don't have 3 of the top players on your roster in the league, you don't win anymore. It didn't say much.
Yeah. Well, it was a struggle for him of late, and also just generally speaking, I mean, Brown couldn't stay healthy all the time, or Tatum couldn't stay healthy, and they couldn't keep their role players around. They would go to other teams and that kind of thing, and that seems to be kind of the big thing. You mentioned having the big 3, but also
they're young too. You don't win the NBA titles when and your best players are 22 and 23, and that's what Tatum and Brown are still like 22, 23 years old. And they will, if they stick together, they will be formidable.
Yep.
Down the road, they'll probably have to add another piece, but in the NBA, it's generally late 20s, early 30s is and if you got those players at that age.
Yep. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week. Should be on Monday.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.